Delighted to now introduce our next speaker, Duncan Kenderdine, Executive General Manager, Strategy and Development, who's going to be at Downer, who's going to be talking to us about sustainable social and economic infrastructure. Duncan has over 25 years of construction experience, has worked on the Skirt and Kaikoura rebuilds, led the Memorial Park Alliance near the Carillion in Wellington, close to my heart, which completed early, I understand. Not too many of those at the moment. I know he has clear views on Contract Form 3910, so I've talked to him about it. So I think he's an ideal man to talk to us about sustainable infrastructure. Thanks, Duncan.
No, that's not me. While we get the technical issues sorted out, Morena, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to this very pertinent and current subject. Procurement, the state of the industry, productivity, it's hot. And then we had the Prime Minister speaking this morning on certainty, people and risk. So today I'm talking about how productivity and procurement link to some of the key points raised in a recent opinion piece by our CEO, Steve Killeen, about the state of the industry. In simple terms, that paper highlighted a number of challenges in the industry and suggests that solutions can be found in better procurement, better investment in people and technology, and an understanding that all aspects of the industry, from clients to bankers, advisors, lawyers, designers, and contractors, need to contribute to making the changes required. We need to make changes. We have, at the moment, peak output. We're putting in place more work today than we ever have before in New Zealand's history. But companies are going to the wall while there is a shortage of skilled resource, just when, as Sir John Key noted last night, we need to get ahead of the curve. The 2017 National Construction Pipeline Report by MB expected construction investment to peak by $42 million by 2020. The Prime Minister reframed that this morning with $48 billion in the next 5 years. Those are serious numbers. I didn't do the maths checking, but let's assume that she had her figures right, that it was twice what we did in the previous 5 years. See if we've got that yet? No? Still struggling. That's right. So the challenge about strengthening New Zealand infrastructure for tomorrow. Low productivity, engagement and development of our people, low margins and high risk transfer, representation needs to be sustainable across the industry, and legacy and liability issues. Social infrastructure is the foundation of our modern society, connecting the communities around us. As our population grows, our city expands, our technology improves, we need to be increasingly critical of the challenges this brings for infrastructure. We need to better understand how to extend the design life of our buildings, improve the flow of our transport networks, and renew our aging utilities to better cope with our changing needs and increasingly adverse natural events. All at a time when the sector, or parts of the sector, to quote a Stuff article from this morning, are performing terribly. That is the survey of construction CEOs just yesterday. New Zealand is not alone in facing these challenges. The recent Farmer Review of the UK construction labour model described 3 root causes of the issues facing the construction industry, and they are equally applicable here today. Firstly, the industry has evolved a survivalist shape, structure and set of commercial behaviours in reaction to the situation it operates in. That environment is characterised by low capital reserves and uneven demand. Secondly, the industry and clients usually have different interests reinforced by traditional procurement protocols and resistance to change. And finally, that there is no significant incentive to bring about transformational change. I would say that there is now a recognition of the need for change, particularly in the last 24 hours, it would appear. And the steps towards a national infrastructure organisation being placed in the centre of procurement and planning and construction are to be applauded. I also acknowledge Kim Campbell's call yesterday for a paradigm shift. He put it slightly more bluntly than that. However, we cannot get complacent. This latest review in the UK comes on the back of a series of reviews reaching back in time, from standardised contract calls in the 1960s to the well-known Latham and Egan reports, which are well worth a read today because they're as applicable today as they were then, from the 1990s. And now we see our Australian colleagues coming out with a New South Wales government action plan that Tommy referred to this morning. That is a concerted effort on their part to turn around the highly litigious construction sector that is present in New South Wales at the moment. So I'd like to briefly touch on a couple of those 5 points that I raised before. Hopefully at some stage we'll get them on screen. Firstly is low productivity. Low productivity increases are an important part of any solution for the shortage of infrastructure. New Zealand's construction productivity is low compared to other countries. And you would have heard the statement that low margins are preventing investment in the development of people, systems, and technology that can drive longer-term productivity. Often when we talk about productivity, and this is where the slide would be kind of handy, we would be talking about people in orange vests. And we all drive past people working on the streets and say, gosh, I wish they'd move faster. Because that would be productivity in action. But productivity is not that simple. It is never that quick to fix. It is a multi-layered issue with many connections between flow and efficiency. If we talk about flow, we talk about the movement of data, of information, from turning ideas to concepts to designs through procurement, and hence to work orders, plant, materials, labour, and the completed product. Let me just do a quick catch-up. There we go. Perfect. Completed product. And then to the maintenance, and finally, and more part of the conversation, what happens at the end of the life cycle? The whole cradle to grave, and ideally rebirth into something new. Bim models, again, a very current topic at the moment. Often big investments by clients into these things, then they don't get issued to the contractor in a usable form. This is a classic example of the disconnect in this flow of information. And when we talk about efficiency, we talk about how much effort each of those steps takes and its impact on the other steps. We could list forever the examples of poor efficiency in the market today. A classic one, and I think I can just see it from here, there's a building site nearby where hundreds of workers were held up while waiting for a building inspector. One building inspector, hundreds of workers. Another one, a road construction project where people are building a road around a single power pole in the middle of the alignment. That pole has been there for 9 months longer than it should have been. We have the required certified and ticketed people to shift it. But the way the lines company structures work means that we can't do it, they have to get their contractors to do it, and their contractors were busy. And then finally, for a link into procurement. Procurement doesn't get away that easily. A simple but frustrating example for us, which may seem a bit strange to most people, is pothole repairs. So often in a contract for maintenance, we have a time limit as to how fast we can fix a pothole repair when it is notified. So therefore, we send 3 people in a ute, creating carbon footprints, holding up traffic, increasing congestion, fixing one pothole, because that's what our contract says we must do. When we worked with clients on the integrated management of this, we've seen productivity increases of 600% or more. And then a bit of discussion on this, the second challenge. There's been a lot of noise about the subject, and I don't intend to dwell on it too much here. However, it is and has been an endemic issue in the construction industry for some time. When projects are judged fairly on time, cost, and quality, the long-term issues can be addressed sustainably, which provides better outcomes for the client, the community, and the shareholder. In an industry with high risk profiles and low margins, the exposure is significant for the shareholder, be they a corporate investment fund or a taxpayer-funded public infrastructure. Over recent years, the industry has seen decreasing profit margins at the point of pricing and an increased transfer of risk through more onerous contract conditions. Risk transfer include cost escalation risk, utility location risk, and unforeseen ground condition risk. This has created a perfect storm as low margins and risk allowances fail to cover the gap. When these risks come to fruition, many of the contractual conditions described above have come from overseas markets, and in particular, the design and build of complex projects. It is particularly disturbing to see such risk transfer clauses coming into mainstream, smaller, and build-only contracts, especially given that some of those smaller contractors don't have the joys of having in-house lawyers on hand to negotiate contracts and will only see the impact of these clauses too late. It is no longer appropriate to bet the balance sheets of our large construction companies on single project performance. I see on LinkedIn recently an article from Mace Construction, a 5,000 person strong construction company in the UK with turnover close to €2 billion, celebrating a great year, fantastic year for them, 115% increase in profit. The number for their record profit, €23 million, 1.2%. In our market, that makes them 2 bad projects away from history. I'm also concerned that those sitting on the sidelines, and I might offend some here, those who see the recent failures as a clearing out process that involves companies that in the commentator's mind have had it too good for too long. This has to be at odds with any view of economic efficiency of the New Zealand economy. Apologies for the lawyers in the room, but dollars spent on liquidators and lawyers resolving disputes and company wind-ups does not make the waka go faster. So, what can we do about it? There are 5 areas that we'd like to just quickly flick through that we think can make an appreciable difference to the construction industry in New Zealand. Funding research and development is the first of those. The industry needs a stronger investment into this area. With investment, we can leverage our waste products, ensure better use of technologies, and commercialise our creativity to the world. With a value-led procurement model, the flow-on effect will allow the industry to focus on new technologies in partnership with the client. Again, Sir Michael Latham in the 1990s in the UK was suggesting the funding of increased research from insurance levies. We have brands and other organisations taking up that challenge, but the question I have is it enough, and is it fast enough? I do recognise the recent moves by this government to improve the tax situation around research and development. And a big topic, obviously, at the moment, which I believe we'll be hearing about this afternoon, is the Procurement Centre of Excellence. This could deliver strong leadership, standardised collaboration contracts, and fair and transparent procurement process with a focus on value and not on lowest price. The creation of a Procurement Centre of Excellence that can standardise contract forms in collaboration with industry and provide advice on the most appropriate forms for the intended purposes is needed to spark this change. It would be anticipated that the agreed forms would be used without amendment in the public sector procurement and would be available to private sector clients free of charge. Critical to success of this would be the leadership from practitioners that have demonstrated ability to change the status quo in procurement with demonstrable best practice outcomes. Fair and transparent procurement focuses on value and not lowest price. We need a way to break the cycle and focus on the future. We cannot continue to have every single major project that comes out with bespoke contract terms. And I hope I'm not suffering from cognitive dissonance as various ministers talk to this, but I suspect I might be. Because if I turn to the government for guidance on this matter, I go to the government procurement principles and I speak here to number 4, and this is a quote. Get the best deal for everyone. Get best value for money. Account for all costs and benefits over the lifetime of goods and services. Make balanced decisions. Consider the social, environmental, and economic effects of the deal. Encourage and be receptive to new ideas and ways of doing things. Don't be too prescriptive. Take calculated risks and reward new ideas. End quote. Minister of Building and Housing, Jenny Salasier, has come out reinforcing adherence to the guidelines. However, awarding contract rules, which is a further down in that page, talks about awarding to the lowest price. So how do I compare that principle 4 with government departments with contract conditions where a 3910 contract, build only, just for memory, has 99 of the 100 clauses rewritten? That is before you get to 12 pages of special conditions for a $350,000 contract. It is madness. The best condition, I saw that in the 3910 build only, was the fact that there were 2 clauses, one relating to the contractor taking liability for the design, and the other one was taking liability for the design intent. I'm an architect by background and training, and I don't know what that means, so I'm not sure how the bloke on the hammer does. Collaboration. There's a lot being made of collaboration. To be clear, as contractors, we do not see that as absolving the contractor of all risk. And I think sometimes that's what is inferred when contractors talk about collaboration. True collaboration occurs when parties understand each other's risks and work together to minimize them for all parties. Then standardization. The suite of New Zealand standards contracts are not dead, but we would suggest that the risks inherent in amending terms freely is not clearly understood by clients, and perhaps the value of decades of development and testing through the courts of these contracts is not fully appreciated. A mature procurement centre would not slavishly follow the strict risk allocation of some of the PPPs we've seen in Australasia. It would be able to morph with recognised disparity in risk allocation, in a similar way that we now see light rail projects in Australia incorporating a more collaborative approach to underground services. We would strongly endorse the Centre of Excellence needing to innovate, trial, fail fast without fear, and move on, which suggests it would need to be involved in the whole life cycle of a project. That is obviously above my pay grade to decide who and how that happens, but we look forward with interest to see. The third is levelling the workload. I may have the years slightly wrong, but as long as I've been in the industry, this is what happens. Central and local government is the major purchaser of infrastructure. Clear, transparent, and mostly sustainable programs of work will allow investment to close the quality and productivity gap that exists in New Zealand. Government contracts need to have a more realistic assessment of the risk up front. As a result, all parties will benefit. A sustainable delivery of the infrastructure pipeline will also help to ensure that the industry can employ local people and ensure the right capable talent is trained and able to deliver quality outcomes. This needs to be a politically unified long-term view, one obviously that the Infrastructure New Zealand has been holding for some time, with an agreed pipeline of infrastructure investment. Again, an example, and excuse the reference to road maintenance contracts, of what can be done with levelled workload and efficiency at a granular level are super crews. A key activity of road maintenance is resurfacing. That occurs historically at a road near you every summer. With longer term maintenance contracts over the last 5-year period, we've been able to shift our smaller locally based and older sprayer fleet to regionally based super crews. So what, you say? We've invested in better plant, increasing in training, and being able to create better work practices so we annualise the terms and conditions for the workforce. This has reduced our fleet by 40%, while increasing our output by 24%. Only possible when the contractor can see a solid workload horizon for the investment and changes it needs to make. Picking up from Adrian's presentation on housing, and with particular reference to the housing conversations yesterday on the panel, I'd like you to reflect on this model. This is a structure model from lean thinking. Many of you will be familiar with the principles, and you may have seen the components of it enacted, and lean has a huge applicability to the construction sector. However, before we can unleash the full potential, we need to find a way to level more of the workload. Like any good house, the foundation of this one is a level workload. And my last 2 areas of focus. He aha te mea nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is the people, it is the people, it is the people. Success starts with a committed workforce. Too often we jump to complaints before compliments, especially with social media at our fingers. The community can contribute by respecting the teams delivering the results. People manage the critical infrastructure to keep New Zealand connected, and we need to recognise the people. Our interaction together as a community is essential to the success of social infrastructure, and we know that good outcomes come from respecting the teams delivering on site. In real terms, this might mean slowing down respectfully at roadwork sites, or even offering the local technician connecting your phone a cup of tea. Over 250,000 people are employed in construction-related occupations. These need to be safe, secure, and well-rewarded jobs, and we need to recognise that it is easy for our people to compare Australian conditions to the New Zealand market, and if they move over there, it's sometimes hard to get them back, whereas the reverse is really true. We also need to value social benefit. We have worked with the government to develop a Māori leadership program, Te Are Whanaki, to improve representation of Māori across our business. Separately to that, through a number of downer employment pathways, over 1,000 people have been transitioned off unemployment benefits and into work. And we see the recently announced Mana and Mahi initiative will further strengthen employment and development of our people. The boom-bust cycle of procurement just makes it harder to develop people. While the official number of trainees in New Zealand is growing quite substantially, clearly, if we look overseas as we are at the moment for simple tradespeople, while young people are looking for meaningful employment, then something is amiss in our industry, and perhaps we shouldn't just blame the young people. So, in closing, Downer has been committed to New Zealand for over 80 years. A focus on industry training and developing our people will ensure we can continue to provide local talent to our clients. While we continue to face many challenges, some smart thinking and collaboration will create a stronger future for New Zealand's critical infrastructure. Investment in infrastructure, I repeat, is an investment in society, which merits a procurement model that is much more than just a transaction. We are optimistic about what can be done if we're prepared to make tough decisions and change the way we approach the challenge. What is clear, collectively, we will be in trouble if we don't. Thank you.